Before I summarize it now, let's talk about the land covenant. And to do that, we turn now to Deuteronomy chapter 28. Deuteronomy chapter 28. And this is where some people that are Christians are not really understanding. God promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that the land of Canaan would be the homeland of their descendants. But this covenant was conditional, and that it depended upon the behavior of the people. If they turned away from God's laws and lived in sin, God would then cast them out from the land. Listen closely now. The blood covenant, the atonement, was kept year after year. But God told the people of Israel, the land is yours as long as you obey. If you stop obeying, I will kick you out of the land. Let's read that now. That's from Deuteronomy chapter 28, and we read verse number 15. But it shall come to pass, if you will not hearken unto the voice of the Lord your God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command you this day, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. And if you talk about a curse list, this is the worst one that we have. But I'm going to turn to verse number 60 right now. God said this, moreover, he will bring upon you all the diseases of Egypt, which you were afraid of, and they shall cleave unto you. Now, Jewish people have a peculiar thing that other people do not have. They have a disease that is confined to within the Jewish people. That disease, they know about it. There's no cure for it. And this is something they've been struggling with for centuries. And God said that's part of the curse. Also every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of the law, then will the Lord bring upon you until you be destroyed. You shall be left few in number, whereas you were as the stars of heaven for multitude, because you would not obey the voice of the Lord your God. It shall come to pass that as the Lord rejoiced over you to do you good, and to multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice over you to destroy you, and to bring you to naught, and you shall be plucked from off the land, which you go to possess it. And the Lord shall scatter you among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there you shall serve other gods, which neither you nor your fathers have known, even wood and stone. And among these nations shall you find no ease, neither shall the sole of your foot have rest. But the Lord shall give you a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. And your life shall hang in doubt before you, and you shall fear day and night, and shall have none assurance of your life. In the morning you shall say, would God it were even. Even you shall say, would God it were morning. For the fear of your heart, wherein you shall fear, and for the sight of your eyes, which you shall see. And the Lord shall bring you into Egypt again with ships, by the way where I spake unto you. You shall see it no more again, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Now, this is a strong statement that God gave through Moses in Deuteronomy chapter 28. And the question then is this, has this been fulfilled? And the answer is yes. The land covenant is no longer in force. The 10 northern tribes lost their land and captive Samaria in 721 BC to the Assyrians. If you read in Chronicles, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, and so on, you find that the 10 northern tribes were taken by the Assyrians, and they were removed out of the land and scattered in other parts of the Assyrian Empire, and the land was taken over by Assyria. Some of the descendants of the 10 northern tribes came back, and they became known as Samaritans, and the Jews hated them. So at the time of Christ, you had Galilee, in the north, which was populated by Jews. You had Samaria in the middle, populated by Samaritans. And the Samaritan, the reason they hated them was that when the 10 northern tribes were scattered, they started to intermarry. So they were a mixed race. They were not pure. And that's why the Jews hated them. And you read in the gospel, they didn't like the Samaritans. In the south, where you had Jerusalem and Judah, that's where the Jews lived. That's the time of Christ. That's how it was developed at that time. Now, the Jews lost their land in 587 BC to the Babylonians, and we had the Babylonian captivity. So, 721, the northern part was taken away. 687, the southern part was taken away, and the kingdom of Israel ceased to exist. The kingdom of Israel. I got to interject something here. We have the kingdom of God, which is spiritually. We have the kingdom of Satan, which is spiritual. And we have the kingdom of Israel, which is a physical kingdom. More in a few moments here. After 70 years of captivity in Babylon, King Cyrus decreed that the Jews who wanted to return to Judea and Jerusalem could do so. There were more than 1 million Jews living in Babylon and Persia, but only 42,360 Jews, men, took advantage of this offer. And I want to read that to you because I think it's important, because many of you have never heard of this. Ezra chapter 2, if you read from verse number 64, the whole congregation together was 42,303 score, besides their servants, their maids, of whom there were 7,337, and there were among them 200 singing men and singing women. Now, God allowed Jews to return, but he never told them to have an independent country. They were allowed to live in the land, but God never commissioned them to rule the land. They're allowed to live there. 42,360 Jewish men came back, and the rest of them stayed in Babylon. The Jews never regained political control over the Promised Land. It was hoped that the Messiah would remove all foreigners and reestablish the kingdom of Israel. I'm sure that you recall in the Gospels where it says that men came to try to force Jesus to be the Messiah. So in order for you to understand the Messiah concept from a Jewish viewpoint, the Jews felt that the Messiah would be a political leader, a military leader. He would simply come in, clean out the Romans, establish the kingdom of Israel, and conquer all the nations in the world, and rule out of Jerusalem, and the Jews would rule with him over all nations. That's the mindset of the Jews at the time of Christ. That's the mindset of the Kabbalistic Jews today. The same mindset. And that's what Jesus said when Pilate said, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He said, "My kingdom is not of this world." His kingdom is in each one of us. His kingdom is spiritual. If we turn now to the book of Acts, chapter 1. That's the book of Acts, chapter 1. Even the apostles still could not get over, when is he going to establish the kingdom of Israel? And I'm going to read to you here from Acts 1, 6 through 7. When they therefore were come together, they asked of him, saying, Lord, will you at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? Will you at this time restore again the kingdom of Israel? Most of you don't have history background, but the Jews have rebelled 4 times. The first time was the Maccabean revolt, and that's where we got the Hanukkah from, the Hanukkah holiday they have. And the Maccabeans were able for a short time to control Jerusalem and hold the land until they were defeated. And then we had revolts In 70 AD, we had a revolt about 50, 60 years later. And when the Jews simply tried to, with force, kick out the Romans and establish the kingdom of Israel. And every time they did, they were defeated. And history tells us in the history books that every time they were defeated, men and women were taken as slaves and sold into all of the Roman Empire.